I'm not going to lie to the American people. Nothing's going to happen if we don't get 60 votes in the Senate. We're not even close to that on the Republican or the Democrat side. Why try and divide people further? Why not talk about the fact that we should be trying to save as many babies as possible and support as many mothers as possible? I think the media has tried to divide them by saying we have to decide certain weeks. In states, yes. At the federal level, it's not realistic. It's not being honest with the American people.
So we got to have a discussion about this because it's becoming more than just an aggravation to me. Welcome back to the program. Your lovable curmudgeon Dana Loesch here on this issue. One of the things that I'm planning on doing here as we go throughout the summer is have a discussion about national conservatism. It is not conservatism total. It is this movement that is incredibly reminiscent of some stuff that we saw in the 70s and 80s that led to the boondoggle of the quote-unquote bushy, compassionate conservatism of the 90s. And we got to have a discussion about it because it's coming up again. This happens like every cycle. Every now and then you have other people who, younger generations who come up and they don't recognize that we've already done this and it didn't work. In fact, it's one of the reasons why everything that they're pushing now for national conservatism is literally one of the reasons why I never pledged myself to the Republican Party, because it's big government centric. And part of it is some of what Haley is describing here. So first off, her entire answer is a misdirect. Her answer only makes sense if you presuppose that anyone on the right, other than Lindsey Graham, who's literally the only person who did this, that anyone on the right is proposing any kind of federal abortion anything. Because nobody is. Now, I know that there are people who say that they would like to establish, as it is forever enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, i.e. one cannot have liberty and pursue happiness without existing. I understand the argument that there should be some sort of federal establishment of that. But at the same time, we also have to take this slow and take it step by step and work on saving as many lives as possible. And doing this state by state and allowing states to make their own determinations. First off, that's not only the way to do this, but constitutionally it is the way to do this. Especially with Roe v. Wade, which was so ridiculously... Roe v. Wade was structured to cave in on itself, because the left had it set up around the issue of privacy. They tried to make it a right to anything that they could try to fabricate into some sort of tent pole to make this thing work. That's what they used it as, and it collapsed. They did this themselves. Nobody did this. As I said before many times, Ruth Bader Ginsburg warned the left that this was going to happen, and they did not listen. They could have done this all these years. They could have done something state by state and protected what they wanted to, or what they claimed, and they never did anything. Now back to this particular case. This is all in response to, and they're focusing on DeSantis, even though other governors have done this. I mean, for crying out loud, look at Georgia and some of these other states that have passed restrictions on abortion as birth control. And that's what we're talking about, because every single state has, I'm going to say this once because I'm so tired of saying this. Every single state has protections for the life of the mother with regards to rape or incest. Every single state has protections. Every single state has protections. Every Ingle say 8 stay as hay or protections pay for pig Latin. Now that aside, Haley's response only makes sense if you think that the Republican Party or any contender or anyone is arguing for something nationally. She's talking about the media trying to bait people while she's taking the media's bait, which I find so ironic. Because the media is trying to get the Republicans to invert and turn on themselves. They want inter-party fighting. And they think that they're going to be able to do this. I go back to this abortion situation with Florida. And they target DeSantis, even though other governors and Republican state legislators have done this. They target DeSantis because they're expecting him to announce, and they think he's going to be a front runner, and they're trying to get ahead of it. So they're trying to cut him down before he even announces. Now, as I said, I mentioned this on Twitter earlier. 6 weeks is more is less than the national number of like 12 to 15, which is where most everybody kind of like, that's the line that kind of everybody hits nationally. Although I have some polling that a lot of Republican primary voters like a 6 week. A lot of Trump voters like a 6 week. I got a lot of data on that. But that aside, this situation with the 6 week in Florida, instead of because you have Haley hitting DeSantis on this, Trump came out to suggest that it was too harsh because he was asked about this as well. I'm so tired of people taking the bait on this. He was asked about this as well in a piece, that he thought that maybe that it was too harsh. He made this statement in an interview with The Messenger that was published today, and he wouldn't elaborate on his own stance. He just said that he has heard that there were pro-life voters that opposed DeSantis's bill. He said, quote, he has to do what he has to do. If you look at what he did, a lot of people don't know if he knew what he was doing. He signed 6 weeks, and many people within the pro-life movement felt that was too harsh. I don't know of anybody who felt that, actually. Because, and when he was asked whether or not he supports restrictions, he said, I'm looking at all options. So this is a play here, and it's also a misdirection. Because there's no one in the pro-life movement who felt that 6 weeks was too harsh in Florida specifically. Literally no one. And by literally no one, I include the non-traditional Republican voters who were Democrats who voted for Republicans, including DeSantis in Florida. All of them ran on this issue. I'll repeat that. All of them ran on this issue. And they ended up winning in a historic landslide. Every single statewide elected office went Republican. Every single state lawmaker office went Republican. Supermajority legislature. Miami-Dade and Palm Beach counties, both, for the first time, went Republican. They eliminated the presence of Democrats in any statewide elected office at all across the state. And they ran on that issue. That was one of the issues upon which they ran. So instead, my thought is in this, and again, it was the 6 weeks. Instead of, which I don't understand this constantly throwing punches hysterically, maybe instead of trying to moderate candidates moderating their positions, instead of promoting, they should be promoting their own accomplishments. It's mind-blowing to me that instead they're trying to moderate themselves. Now, I'll say it again for the people in the back. What works in Florida doesn't necessarily work in Michigan. But again, they all ran on that issue last election and they won in a historic landslide. So maybe, just maybe, some of these Republicans could see how they're messaging in Florida. How did they message this that resulted in their securing a ton of non-traditional GOP voters last go around, while including this issue before hysterically throwing punches? The irony in this is they're saying that, well, there's no way that anyone's going to be able to get independence in that with this kind of messaging or this kind of position. I find that incredibly ironic, again, because they were able to get a ton of Democrats in Florida. Maybe you should check the messaging. And what works there may not work elsewhere. But no one who made that work in Florida is saying that it should work elsewhere. This is a presupposition. They're creating a straw man against which to argue so that they can make themselves look like the reasonable ones against DeSantis. Why are you moderating your position? And I'm going to say this, and you might get mad at me, but I want to know why Trump is suddenly running away from this issue. I mean, it was on his watch that, he had the Supreme Court justices that helped to make the determination for Roe v. Wade. That he is not touting that accomplishment is one of the craziest damn things I have ever seen in politics. What the hell? That is the feather in a cap of any person who believes in individual accountability, who believes in conserving individual liberty, which is the definition of a conservative, before the government. Why is he not touting that? Why is he now running away from the issue? And I'm saying that's what it is. You might get mad at the way that I am describing it. I'm not characterizing it. I'm describing it. Big difference. Because he was pressed about this in this interview, and he would not say. If I were advising him, I would have told him, well, I would immediately go to Roe v. Wade and talk about how this works with the states and this is the best direction, the best route in which to handle this issue. And then you can say, if you're pressed on it to give your answer, you can say, well, this is what I think. If you believe in 6 weeks, if you agree with it, then you can say, yes, this is what I believe, but I also believe that it's most important to save lives. And so if the national average is 12 to 15 weeks, it's a lot better than the abortion on demand, taxpayer funded that Democrats are promoting. So that's the direction we need to go. There's your answer. That is how you handle that issue. The people that he have advising him are absolute shh.
Thank you.
You're welcome. They're garbage. It's almost cringe. The incompetency of the people advising him is a cringe level heretofore never seen in politics. He does not have the same people that he had in 2016, and it is evident. Because 2016 Trump would not have misdirected away from that, answering that. He would have had the answer. And you know this. You know it in your heart of hearts. It's why it makes you mad. You don't moderate yourself. Especially when it was your administration that delivered the Supreme Court justices that enabled this conversation in the first place. Instead of running on that, you're going to sit here and attack somebody for doing what you would have done? I don't get this. It makes no sense to me. And as far as Nikki Haley's a stalking horse for Trump. I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, but now I'm not. She's a stalking horse for Trump. She will never, ever on her own win the office of the presidency. And she's a very nice individual. I don't agree with her on a lot of foreign policy. And I think that she's got some big government positions. I also subscribe to the Reagan belief that my 80% friend is not my 20% enemy. But when it comes to a primary, you have to be very, very clinical and kind of harsh about it. Not in a mean way. And a lot of people on the right get their feelings hurt if you don't like their guy in the primary. It's not about liking a guy. It's like, what can win in November? If you can't, you got to be able to win. And here's the thing. Winning, I told you that a lot of people from the primary, they decide to run, they try to moderate themselves in the general. I see some of these Republican candidates doing that now. Y'all ain't never going to win the primary like that. And you don't moderate your position. You enhance your messaging. Holy cow. But I do believe that Haley's a stalking horse for Trump. And I also have a problem with some of this national conservatism stuff. I wanted to play for you. This is Vivek Ramaswamy, audio soundbite 9. I want you to listen to this soundbite. I addressed this on social media once, but I want you to hear this.
That is why today I'm announcing my support for a new amendment to the U.S. Constitution. That amendment would raise the voting age in this country from 18 to 25, but still tell you that you can vote at 18 if you either do service to this country 6 months in the military or 6 months as a first responder, or else at least pass the same civics test that we make an immigrant pass to actually become a voting citizen in this country.
So here's why I disagree with that. Now, do I like the idea of raising the voting age? I do, actually. But I like the idea of it, but that doesn't mean that I support it because I'm trying to figure out how practically that would work. You want someone to go serve in the military, but you also don't. I mean, you got to refine a lot of stuff. But specifically on his quote here, he had tweeted out, this was a few days ago, that young people no longer value a country that they simply inherit. I kind of have a problem with that statement a little bit. I'm going to come back to that. He says people value something more if they have a stake in creating. That's why I'm proposing the constitutional amendment that requires 18-year-olds to pass. And you heard the details. Here's my issue with this. This should not be a more government solution. We're in this position exactly because of more government. It's not government raising these kids, it's families. I agree that there are government policies pushed by certain political ideologies that contribute to the breakdown of the very family structure that should give us people who value the country in which they're born and do not. I get that. But at the same time, you cannot fix a societal problem with a government policy.